Thank you so much for taking out the time to come on the platform and talk about the amazing work that you're doing. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me on. I love the fact that you want to highlight the problems that we're having with adolescent literacy in the United States, pretty much all over the country. Thank you so much for your interest in it.
Definitely, definitely. If you could start off by speaking to that.
What we are seeing is that our reading scores are going down across the years. If you look at the international NAEP score, the national NAEP score, the international PISA scores, um, the literacy rates for our adolescents are dropping. And not just for our kids that have special needs. We're seeing it in kids who normally don't struggle in reading. The high school teachers and middle school teachers that I have in my program here at University of Miami, they're talking about how their high school kids in some of their AP classes do not know how to figure out how to sound out a word that they don't know. And we have decided that middle and high school remediation reading is not as important, or it feels that way, as early prevention reading in K through third grade. Don't get me wrong, K through third grade, early prevention reading is our cornerstone and foundation. But the students who don't get reading and come out of third grade reading at the third grade level do not get the proper instruction moving forward, especially in middle and high school. The kids that I work with and have worked with for, oh my God, I can't believe it's going on 30 years now. Um, they're the ones who don't pass those statewide tests in reading comprehension. And what I notice is that a majority of the programs that are offered to help them in reading put an emphasis on comprehension and vocabulary. And that works for some of the kids, but not all of it. When they hit sixth grade and don't pass that statewide test, they fall into one of two categories. They either fall into that category where they do not know how to decode. They can't figure out what the word says to read the sentence, to read the paragraph, to then apply a comprehension strategy. And then you've got the other kids who can read the words. They have a comprehension and vocabulary and language problem a lot of times. And you need two different types of reading programs for both of these types of kids. And we end up in high school, middle school, and high school just focusing on that comprehension and vocabulary. And these kids that are still reading, say at the third, fourth, some of them at the first and second grade level, they don't get that phonics and decoding that's necessary in order to help them catch up. And so phonics has always been seen as a very babyish thing to do. There have been a few articles that have come out now, like a gentleman wrote in the New York Times about the need for adolescent literacy and phonics. And in the publication Education Weekly, someone said had an article titled "What's the missing factor in adolescent literacy?" And it's the phonics. Um, but we've got a lot of things that are going on, and our kids just are not reading up to par. And we really need to think about middle and high school reading. What do the teachers need to know? What do the kids need to be taught? Typically, your middle and high school teachers are not trained in how to teach reading, they're content area teachers. And then all of a sudden, you come and you say, okay, now you got to teach reading. And they're like, what? Because they haven't been given the training in it. And I wrote an article quite a while ago about how we really needed to set up an environment where every teacher is a reading teacher and can translate across those contents. Not that they necessarily need to sit there and teach phonics to their kids or take time out of the content to have a reading instruction lesson. But if a kid is struggling, they need to know how to, on the spot, move them forward and help them and have an understanding of what it takes to read. I know COVID caused a lot of problems for some kids. We've got a lot of kids now that are tuned out since COVID. We're seeing a huge scourge in apathy for kids since COVID, and trying to overcome that. But we just really need to think about this middle and high school reading and what these kids need and continue to need in order to move forward in their reading and not be stuck.
Oh, okay. Wow. I really appreciate you breaking that down because I'm a substitute teacher myself, and I could say post COVID, I did see a tremendous change. They weren't prepared to deal with the world as it is. Learning at that level, I felt like they were very far behind. But like you say, it's across the country.
Well, it was interesting. I go so far back. In the 1980s and 1990s, it was basically commonly thought that if you reached sixth grade and couldn't read, you probably were not going to be able to learn to read. So it was very difficult to get into the schools to do research and to try to move things forward. And then, President Bush's administration passed the No Child Left Behind in all of its good, bad, and ugliness. But the one thing with its accountability is it had middle school and high schools had to stand up and take into account those kids that couldn't read and provide them instruction. And because of Nickleby, then my research was allowed to go into schools. And I created a reading program called Amp It Up, which has a very strong phonics base for it. And I've had 3 federal grants to show that it's working really well for that group that has the low decoding. And we've been able to get a lot of these kids reading levels up, and then they can go into other programs that emphasize comprehension and be able to do those strategies. But we have been fighting, and I have been fighting my whole career, this idea of we don't need to teach phonics to these kids. They don't need it, they don't want it, they don't like it. We're not going to do it. That has been an ongoing struggle throughout time. They think that it is something that little kids do, not older kids. But phonics has a progression of being very simple when you start with your single syllable words, with your short vowel sounds, and you get up into your multisyllabic words. And phonics can get very intense and very difficult because of the way the English language is put together. So there's absolutely nothing childish about phonics except for the way you present it, which again is what I tried to do with the program I created, is unbabyfy phonics so that the students didn't feel like they were doing what, say, maybe their younger brother or sister was doing or what they had done before that they didn't pass. Like I changed we don't call it phonics, we call it linguistics. And so I changed this vocabulary on them so they didn't feel like they were doing what their younger brother or sister is doing. We still need so much research to be done for this age group. The government spent, I would say, billions of dollars on teaching K-3 reading, how to put it together, what do they need to learn, how do they need to learn it, and that's where we got the scientifically based reading and all of those ways of teaching reading. But no one has really spent the time and the money on that for our older kids that are still reading far behind. There are just a handful of us middle school and high school researchers that have been diligently working on this for decades, but it's still not getting the traction that the K-3 reading did. There's still, I think, this underlying pervasive idea that, gosh, if they haven't learned it by now, they're probably not going to. Let's find different ways for them to get the material. Nothing gets you material faster than reading. And just listening to it isn't as good as actually reading it. And so I really feel that we need to get more attention on those low struggling readers that once they become that low struggling readers, the longitudinal data shows for them life does not come out very well. They end up being in the jail pipeline. They have all sorts of issues, even with healthcare, like the National Institute of Health has deemed illiteracy a reading a health crisis, because if you are a very low reader, it impacts every aspect of your life. And a lot of the people in poverty are illiterate. When we think about what do you think the percentage of illiterate adults are, or those that are reading below what we would call a basic level in the United States? What do you think that percentage is?
I don't know. Would it be 50% or lower?
Oh, I'm kind of surprised that you said that. It is about 43 to 47% of our adult population is reading below the basic level and cannot even access essential health information, life information, jobs. Our businesses are spending billions of dollars a year teaching new employees how to read. I'm getting ready to write an article on this and how it doesn't just affect school, it affects you lifelong. And now our corporations and businesses are having to spend massive amounts of money just to get their employees literate, because we are not doing a good job at the schools.
Wow, you made a very important point. Like you say, reading it affects every aspect of your life.
I think there's many different opinions on this. With the kids that I work with, those low readers, some of them special ed, some of them not. Research has shown that you can't just stick them at a computer and they're going to learn. They need the teacher interaction, they need the consistent monitoring, the consistent help. And so there are some things that computers and AI, they cannot replace a good teacher. Nothing can replace a good teacher, ever. And there are a lot of benefits that are coming up to it. But what I'm seeing in a lot of the programs that I'm seeing online is they don't really have that phonics understanding. And so they'll read it to the kid and say, okay, say that, they'll have a passage, and if the kid can't read a word, the computer will read it for them. That doesn't teach them how to read. That teaches them how to listen. And so if we don't try to figure out how to have computers be beautiful teachers and really top quality teachers, we're missing out on getting that teacher aspect to it. There are, I am sure, going to come up more and more some great applications for it, but it can't be their total reading, especially for these low readers. Now, kids who have good reading, AI and computers can take them anywhere they want to go because they can access the material, they can read it, they can comprehend it. But just to try to think that AI and technology is going to solve our reading problem, that's making things way too simple. Or I hear a lot of people saying, well, maybe we don't even need to teach reading because the computers can read it for them. I mean, you can tell, to me, that logic doesn't even pan out, because you're not always going to be at a computer where something can read for you. So we have to be very careful how we apply it. It's got to be researched, and it can't just be, oh, well, they had such a fun time on that game program that teaches them to read. Okay, so they had a good time, but did it actually come to fruition that they can now sit down and read? Or are they just having fun, but not actually learning to read? So you can mix those two things up. Engagement doesn't necessarily always mean higher outcomes. So we have to weigh this.
Okay, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can speak for myself. I know I've been looking at my handwriting. It seemed like it's been the quality has been deteriorating because we spend so much time on a computer, so I have to take time out to force myself to start writing things back, on paper with the pen, or even doing my signature. It looks horrible now, because of such advancements in technology. Now, I wanted to ask you. You had mentioned some journals. Have you ever wrote a book or even considered making a documentary?
I have not written a book, and no, I haven't thought about a documentary, but that might be a interesting aspect to look into. I have been putting most of my time into Amp It Up, the program that I've created. So I'm trying to get that published so that it can now be available to schools, and working with the teachers to try to get a culture within a middle and high schools. This idea of we're all reading teachers. We all need to know all of this. But hey, if you want to help me with the documentary, let's get together.
I mean, it's a very, very important subject. It's very interesting. So I'm sure people would definitely take notice, and maybe help change things. Now, I can ask you, going back a little bit, when did you develop this passion for, special education and adolescent literacy? Do you have educators in your family? Is this something you always wanted to do since you were younger?
I hated school. I hated it. I went to middle and high school in the 70s. I would have been, if I'd gone to school in the 90s or the 2000s, I would have been your LD ADHD kid. But we didn't have that then. Reading was always very difficult for me. And I do come from a family. My grandmother was a teacher, and my father's was very educated and all of this. But my brother and I struggled in school, and I hated it, and did not want to be a teacher. Although I did love telling people what to do, because that's what teachers get to do. Um, but it wasn't until I had moved back to Tulsa from California, and I got the bug of teaching. And I went and got my master's, and found out that it was in my late 20s that things started to click. Like when I was in my master's, I learned this reading program, and all of a sudden my vocabulary shot up and my reading shot up. And having that experience helped me very much identify with these kids that are struggling, how to break it down, how to move them forward, how to keep them interested and understanding. I am here to help you. You are going to learn to read. You are going to learn to do mathematics. Let me show you how. So that experience kind of gave me this really deep understanding of where they're at and how to move them forward. And so I still kind of get a knot in the pit of my stomach when I enter a school, because it just was not a good thing for me when I was younger. And helping kids deal with that. How I landed on middle school was kind of interesting, because I was in my teacher training program, and I went and did some stints at elementary schools. And I realized really quick I didn't want to work with the little kids. As adorable as they were, that wasn't for me. And I found my home with those 6th through 8th graders and handling their fun, hormonal up and downs was always kept things very interesting. And I just found I clicked with that age group. And so it's been wonderful. And I taught for about 3 or 4 years. And then I really wanted to, I got an opportunity to go get my PhD. And I thought, okay, if I can help train teachers also, if I can do something that can help the teacher, then I can affect more kids. And that's where the development of my reading program came up, and the training of teachers and getting the word out. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful career. I've had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to continue it.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I definitely take my hat off to you. The middle school kids can be a handful, but they definitely a lot of fun for sure. Um, okay. Now I can ask you this. Now you actually teach courses at the university. What courses?
I teach the reading methods course where we teach the kids how to how to teach reading, and then I also teach the mathematics, how to teach mathematics. So I my second love is teaching mathematics to kids with disabilities and struggling mathematics.
Now I can ask you about this. Since you've been doing it for so many years, have you seen any changes?
Yes, very much so. It's much more accepted. It's much less stigmatizing. I remember when I got my diagnosis, I was in college. I just broke down crying because in the those 80s and everything, it was seen as something odd and different. And now it's much more accepted. And one of the TikTok things I'm always on is an ADHD TikTok. Here's your symptoms. Here's how you're doing, or learning disabilities. And people want to know about it. They want to learn about it. They want to know how to help people. If you've got friends or spouses or kids, people are wanting to know how to help them as opposed to how to discourage them or ostracize them. It's much, much more acceptable and seen as just a part of the human condition.
Do you have any upcoming projects? Or are you working on anything currently? And if the viewers want to keep up with what you're doing and follow, is it? Do you have a website, or is it any way for them to do that?
I do have a website for my reading program. I am currently doing a Institute of Education Sciences grant. I've got 3 more years on it. We're going into the middle schools. We are comparing Amp It Up to the other programs that are in the schools, and we're continuing that. And like I said, I'm also working on getting a business started with the program so that I can sell it and get it out to the schools.
Yeah, that really sounds amazing. So we about 26 minutes in. I really appreciate you taking out the time to stop by, and I apologize about the delay. And again, as I mentioned, I will edit it, and before I put it out, then I can send you the link so you can check it out.
I appreciate it. If there's anything else you want to know about, let me know. And thank you for doing what you do.
Likewise, likewise. Thank you so much. Take care and be safe out there.
You too. Have fun.
All right. See you.
Bye.